The first part of today's lecture, whereby we were covering different components individually. What is the capability of each component and what does each component do when we want to provide security in our infrastructure. But now we are going to look at the overall network situation or the overall network scenario, that how is an enterprise infrastructure built, what are the different parts of an enterprise infrastructure, and how these components fit into that overall enterprise end-to-end enterprise infrastructure. So let's take a look at the major applications of firewalls, and this is not only true for firewalls but also the other services which the firewalls might be running, as you know, IPS or anti-DDoS or VPN gateway services. So our firewall could be placed at different parts of our infrastructure or of our network. We could have firewalls protecting our branches, we could have firewalls protecting our data centers, we could have firewalls protecting our internet access or the perimeter firewalls right behind our gateway routers. We could have the firewalls protecting our internal infrastructure, the traffic that is moving between different parts of our infrastructure, that could be protected through internal firewalls as well. So we could have the firewall placed or installed at different locations depending upon our specific requirements or depending upon how critical our infrastructure or different parts of our infrastructure are. However, as you can see, the data center would almost always be protected with a firewall. Your enterprise infrastructure would almost always be protected by firewalls. And the rest of the network, branch network, if it's an important branch or if it's a critical branch, you might or might not want to protect it. Or internal, inside of a network, inside of a network, you might or might not want to protect your infrastructure or different parts of the infrastructure, depending upon what are your priorities and preferences and what are your policies. And depending on where it is located, the firewall can be providing, or USG can be providing multiple functionalities. Could be providing you with access control functionality, IPS functionality, antivirus functionality, data leak prevention, DLP functionality, or URL filtering, or even quality of service, which can be provided either through your network switches or routers or through your USG, depending upon what exactly you want to achieve with implementing QoS or quality of service. Okay, if we look at how the firewall protects our network, those of you who have already worked with firewalls would be knowing that firewall actually protects our network by dividing it into different zones. Or that is why we call these firewalls as zone-based firewalls. So what this slide is showing is that we are going to divide or compartmentalize our network into different zones, and then we are going to use firewalls to connect those zones with each other. So whenever traffic wants to move or traffic is moving from one zone to the other, that traffic is going to go through the firewall, and the firewall is going to make sure that one zone is protected from the other zone or zones. And it is going to make sure that the traffic that is going from one zone to the other is genuine traffic, it's not an attack, or it does not violate any of the firewall rules or policies that we have implemented, and the traffic should be allowed or should not be allowed to go from one place to the other within our network. So we divide our network into different zones. For example, we could divide our network into DMZ zone, internet zone, data center zone, or any operation or administrative zones, and then we could implement policies on our firewalls which could monitor and control the traffic moving between those zones. As I said, for a number of concepts that I mentioned before, you are going to read the concept of zones and understand and study the operation of firewalls in detail in later modules in this course. Since this is just the introductory module, we are only going to touch very briefly on how firewall works and what is the concept of zones. So even if you don't understand exactly what zones are and how they work, that's okay. You will understand them as you cover more modules in your HCNP course. Okay, finally, the different parts of your network, whether it's your enterprise network or it's your data center within the enterprise network, or it's your cloud data center, or these are remote users, or users carrying their own devices like BYOD, bring your own device, or it's a branch network. When we can place different types of devices, or we might need different functionality at different points in our network. So the different components or different devices that we studied earlier, they could be placed at different parts of our network. For example, if it's our data center, we might need to put a next generation firewall here. We might also need to put in a network intrusion prevention system, whether running on the same firewall or a separate dedicated hardware device. So in the office network, we might need, or at the perimeter of the enterprise network, we might need an SSL VPN termination point, which is our SVN gateway, SVN 5800. We could use web application firewall to protect our application servers. Similarly here in our cloud data center, as I said, cloud data centers are generally mostly the target of DDoS attacks. So we could implement an anti-DDoS device here, or an anti-DDoS solution here, in order to protect our cloud data center resources. And similarly, we could use appropriate solutions at different points in our network. This is just an example. This is not a definitive guide that you must use these devices or solutions at these locations in your infrastructure. And if something is missing, you don't see one solution or one component at a particular location, that should not be used there. So you could also use your anti-DDoS in your enterprise infrastructure or in your data center here, or even at your near your perimeter enterprise gateway or enterprise boundary point. So this is not a definitive guide, but this is just an indication of where these different components can be used. But once again, at the cost of repeating myself, let me state this, that as you cover more and more modules of HCNP security, you understand these devices more and more and their capabilities more, you will be able to understand their application and the exact deployment scenarios more and more. And anyways, in a network design or a security infrastructure design, generally there are no rights and wrongs. Solutions could be better or worse, but there are no absolute, mostly there are no absolute rights or wrongs. A network designed by me could provide the functionality as good as a network designed by you in a different way. So one could be a good design, the other one could be a bad design, but still you have a lot of flexibility when you're designing a network. So this slide is actually giving you ideas about how to design your network and how to implement these components inside of your network. So this is all, my friends, for today. Let's take a look at a small quiz, just a very small quiz. I hope you should all be able to answer this question. So which of the following network devices are deployed at the egress? Or which of the following devices can be deployed at the egress? By egress we mean the point from where traffic is exiting our network, from which traffic is going out of our network, or the gateway of our network. Just type in your answers. I hope all of you can hear me and you are trying to figure out the answer. A, okay, firewall. Firewall could be deployed at the egress. Yeah, right. This is correct. And this is very important to understand as you will learn more about the firewall. Firewall does not only protect the traffic coming into your network, it can also protect the traffic, or it can also check the traffic that is going out of your network. Because you might want certain traffic to go out of your network and certain traffic not to exit a network. So it can be deployed at the egress. And then SVN as well, yeah. Security gateway also, yes, this is correct, Salman. That this is where you would want to initiate or terminate your VPNs. Yes, true. Yes, Salman, A is correct. Yes, firewall obviously. What about intrusion prevention and anti-DDoS? So most of you agree on A and D. What about B and C. What about NIP, Network Intrusion Prevention, and anti-DDoS device? You see, intrusion prevention can also be implemented at the gateway. You could also implement intrusion prevention at the gateway for traffic that is coming into your network or the traffic that is going out of your network. You could actually see or protect the traffic, or you could actually check the traffic that is going out of your network, that if this traffic is intended to intrude any resource, you might want to block that traffic. Intrusion prevention might be implemented very effectively at the gateway layer, both for incoming traffic and for the outgoing traffic. And similarly, anti-DDoS as well. Before I come back to intrusion prevention, anti-DDoS can very effectively be implemented at the gateway, either for traffic that is coming in or the traffic that is going out of your network. Because you see, you have to make sure that the traffic that is going out of your network, that traffic is also not an attack traffic. Because one of the major threats that you might face as a responsible netizen, as a responsible organization sitting on the internet or connected to the internet, it is very important that you make sure that your network is not being used for generating attacks. So in case of a distributed denial of service attack, for example, if it's a distributed denial of service attack, if your network was compromised and your network is being used for launching an attack, or you have become part of a botnet. Now I'm using some terms which might not be very clear to some of you, but just to explain the concept. If you don't understand this, that is okay, but since we are discussing the concepts a little bit more in detail, I hope you will appreciate, those of you who understand this will appreciate this. It is equally important to make sure that the traffic that is exiting your network is also not malicious traffic or not an attack traffic, because that will prove that you are an irresponsible internet citizen and you know about IP's blacklisting. So your network or your servers or your hosts could be blacklisted on the internet because they were compromised intentionally or unintentionally by somebody sitting in your network, and those were being used for generating malicious traffic or generating attacks somewhere else over the internet. So it is important. So coming back to this question, all these devices can be used at the network boundary or at the network perimeter, both for protection against incoming traffic and for checking and filtering the outgoing traffic. So ingress as well as egress traffic can be checked by these devices sitting at the border of your network. I hope this is relatively clear now. So just to summarize all this material introduces different types of network security devices. First we touched upon the different devices, and then we analyzed or checked the different ways of how these devices are placed inside of the network. So this was all for today. If there are any questions, we can address those questions on the chat. So I'll stop the recording now, and the recording will be available after some time later on, and you can always access the recording if you want. Thank you.